Collaborative world building in D&D or in any TTRPG is amazing, and it's one of my absolute favourite parts of the game. When I run games these days, I have hardly any unused prep. I have players who are way more engaged. Players who might have been passive, like waiting to be entertained. They're now filling up group chats between sessions with ideas, and we have worlds that are deeper and richer than anything I could have imagined alone. But saying, hey, let's build a multiverse, that's likely to get you blank looks from your players. It sounds daunting, and it's probably not what they signed up for. Instead, I went back to the drawing board, or the infinite hex grid somewhere between time and space. And I created a system which can help even the most passive of players bring their creativity to the table. My name's Rich, this is Renegade Rolls, and let's be storytellers and world builders together with our friends. First up, the bad news. As a game master, if you're expecting to do some collaborative world building and have less work to do, you're going to be disappointed. By bringing players into the fold with us, by letting them help out, we actually have just as much work to do, if not maybe even some more. But the payoff is so worth it. If you're someone like me who gets satisfaction from the work of world building rather than just the finished result, then this video is for you. And I've got some good news for you. You can start that collaborative world building with your players anytime you like, even mid-campaign, even if you've only got one session to go. But we'll get to that soon. In the meantime, let's go back to that world of pure imagination, that void space, and think about the very beginnings. Let's talk about the campaign concept. To start with, what we need... To start with, what we need is a strong baseline setting. Players are full of creativity, ingenuity, and insight, but only if they've got something to build from. If you present them with the eternal void space, it's going to be tricky for them to figure out exactly what they can contribute. So my big recommendation is to present your players with the high-level sketch of your campaign setting, the wider world, and then some very specific details about the starting location, where they're going to begin their adventure. This is your opportunity to be really strong on exactly what you're looking for from your campaign. This is your genre, your setting, your mood, anything you can do to steer your players when they begin to help you. It is such a trope within world building to have a secret closed off area, somewhere surrounded by mountains, somewhere completely inaccessible to regular people, that you can save for later to have as the final boss location. As well as being geographically deeply improbable. This is a really bad idea when it comes to letting your players in, letting them help you build this world. If you have a place that's only known by rumours and legends, your players can't usefully add to that in any concrete way. Having said that, letting your players come up with those rumours and fables and stories about this place could be a fun way around it. Some of them might even be true. To get your game off to a really solid start, to help your players focus on just one part of the world, create a very clear and memorable starting location, and tell your players that this will be the focus of the first few sessions. You don't need to build much more outside of this, as you can always expand it later. Creating and then presenting this world and location summary to your players is such an important step, as it's the foundation that everything else builds upon, especially their character creation. Collaborative character creation is so cool. It's probably my favourite part of this process. Giving your world to your players and seeing where they run with it, seeing where they take things. What we're looking for from them is actually a bit less than you think. All we need is a brief but specific outline of who their character is and where in the world they're from. This can be done solo, but it's even better if you can get folks around the table and pitch in and cross-examine each other, asking each other to develop and deepen these connections. These backstories, while they are specific, they need to give you as GM a bit of space, a bit of wriggle room to give surprises to your players. As a minimum, let your players know that you will be renaming, reskinning, and maybe reworking things, but be clear if you are contradicting them in some way. To give myself some credit as a player, when I set up a backstory for a character called Jacoby Callisto, he had the cool backstory of the traumatic youth, the separation from his little sister, but when it came to the details of these nasty folks who attacked his village, I left them as the Dark Ones. That could easily be replaced by the GM for something a bit more specific, or that could just be the name they're known as locally, and elsewhere they get called all manner of different things. As GM, if you're working on your backstories with your players, or they send you something that's pretty much done, you are completely within your rights to say, no, that's outside of my concept for this campaign. Much as it's fun if a player comes to you and says, oh, my character's from that laser dinosaur island over there. If that doesn't fit with your gritty, Dark Souls-inspired setting, tell them, and tell them early, because the sooner you as GM make that clear to the player, The sooner that they can come up with something else, and the less sunk costs that you have in this mad, strange, crazy idea. A shout out to my friend Laura, who came up with the idea of treating this like a colouring book, where the game master is the one who draws the outline image, but your players are the ones who add all of the colour within the lines. A system which ties its character creation deeply into the world building is Daggerheart. The game provides a series of blank but super evocative maps. There's no markers for specific locations, just interesting shapes, and the game encourages the players to fill out with where the characters are from and anywhere particularly interesting to their characters, somewhere they might have heard of, somewhere they've heard rumours about. Within the space of just a few minutes, your players can take that blank map, cover it in doodles, cover it in drawings, cover it in ideas, bring that back to you, and give you this amazing thing full of evocative locations and interesting stuff, complete GM fuel. But then your work really begins. Collating your players' efforts and recombining them again back into this world that you've built is a fascinating challenge, and I love it. There is so much fun to be had by looking at what your players have contributed and then squishing things together, maybe combining them, maybe separating bits out, or something that was maybe a little throwaway line that someone said, expanding that into something big, which could be a main theme of the campaign. My favourite way to expand on the information my players have given me is to think about levels of why and therefore. You'll often hear this spoken about as top-down or bottom-up world building. If your player tells you their hometown of Brighthaven is a place of joy and mirth and laughter, figure out why that is. Is there some magical protection on the place? Are people just drawn there if they're naturally good spirits? Or if you're feeling cynical, maybe that happiness is at the cost of something else, a deep dark secret that few people know about. The game of Therefore is equally fun to play. The town of Brighthaven is full of mirth and laughter. Maybe that means that the people are a bit gullible, a bit naive. Maybe it's a very insular place where people don't think about the concerns of the outside world at all. Let me tell you, from the bitter and sleep-deprived voice of experience, it is so easy to fall down a rabbit hole with this stuff. The real challenge isn't in adding the details, it's in stopping. It's giving this world that you're making a bit of space to breathe, leaving some uncertainties, leaving some details unfilled, knowing that you're heading to the table where you have not just your imagination, but the imaginations of all of your players ready to jump in. So treat this step with a light touch, if you can. Trust your improvising brain and know that there are so many good ideas coming in the future for you. One of the things that marks out a great game master is that they will enjoy the uncertainty. They'll enjoy not knowing what happens next. And at our game tables, we have ample opportunity for uncertainty as we build the world session by session. Number 4 is a big one. Every session around the table, as GM, you should be looking for opportunities to bring your players in. Give them any excuse to expand on something that you've started and see where their minds go. Around my tables, I'll sometimes do this at the expense of my own world building. I'll give the players a starting point, but I won't flesh things out. Leaving things open, leaving things up to them at every opportunity is the secret sauce that makes this whole thing work. One of my favourite ways of getting players to help out with the world building is through scene painting. All you need to do as Game Master is to describe your scene as normal, but then ask your players to add some details to that. Let them paint within those lines. There are a couple of games that I love that do this so well. Brindlewood Bay allows you to create a cosy scene describing what your little old lady who solves crime is going to do in her downtime. The amount of enthusiasm that my players seem to have in describing this person's day-to-day mundane activities, just like knitting for a while, was amazing. It's as though something like switched in their brains, like, oh, I can add this and this and this and this, and suddenly what was a pretty plain scene had so much detail, so much life to it. Being a good GM, I wrote all of this down and folded it back into the world again. A game which absolutely showcases scene painting, and my game of the year so far, is Mapamundi. In that game, your players are chroniclers, tasked with learning about this post-apocalyptic but awesome fantasy world. At each stage, the Game Master is encouraged to throw it open to the players and say, hey, tell me some details about this scene. What do you hear? What do you smell? And giving players opportunities to contribute, letting them create, not necessarily in character, unlocks a completely different side of players. At my tables, when I ran Brindlewood Bay and Mapamundi, I had so much ammunition, so many clever ideas from my players about where the story could go next. I mentioned them before and I'll mention them again. Rumours are a GM's best friend. For players, it's a no-risk way of contributing. If you contribute a rumour, it's up to the GM to decide whether it's right or wrong. For the GM, having this bank of potential ideas leads to so many possibilities. A mechanic which I have just stolen from Blades in the Dark, which is appropriate because it's a game about crimes, is the concept of flashbacks. I now use flashbacks all the time in basically any system that I'm playing. If a character is investigating something and it turns out they remember a fact about it, I love spinning back to when that character found out about this information. As you step into the tomb of Nazalgoth, you recognise that rune glowing gently on the wall. We flash back to the first time you saw it. It's at that point I open it up to the player to describe maybe a scene in a library, maybe a scene in another tomb. I'll leave it entirely up to them, and wherever their imagination chooses to go, I'm always really excited to see the results. If you're feeling brave, if you're feeling very confident in your players, if you know they're experienced role players and just get it, think about unguided roleplay. This is where you as GM, you just shut up for a while and listen to your players as they bounce off each other to build parts of the world organically through conversation and through roleplay. If you're in a setting that's well known to your players, say the Sword Coast, Middle Earth, or something you've been homebrewing together, you can let them just go for it. You can let them just fly, see what happens. When I've done this, it's been so cool to see the details that my players have remembered, but also the bits they feel confident in adding themselves. They might come up with a new location, a new faction, a new monster. If it all fits in with your setting, just go for it. Just sit there behind the GM screen writing lots and lots of furious notes. Speaking of note-taking, because during a session you're likely to come up with so much on the fly, it really helps if you as GM, you're not the only note-taker. If you can persuade someone else at your table to be designated note-taker, to be the keeper of the lore, that makes your job as GM so much easier. My preference is for me as GM to take some rough notes, but knowing that another player is diligently scribbling away. Failing that, you could do an audio recording of your sessions. This will allow you to listen back later in your post-session write-up. Number 5 is the post-session wrap-up. This is where you collect your own notes from the session and bring together everything that your players have contributed. In contrast to a more traditional style of play where GM tells a story and the players react, you'll find you'll have so many more notes from your players that you need to bring together. Simply because character and location details, they won't have been on your notes before the game. This is also the time to ask for clarifications from your players as well. It's likely that something created in a moment may have been interpreted differently by you and your players. With all the notes that emerge from a single game session, it might be worth setting up a shared repository for all the facts and all of the world building that you've done together. A shared document could be a good place to start, but if you're feeling fancy, maybe something like a shared obsidian vault might be just what you need. Though as GM, you'd probably want to maintain a separate one, which had all of your secrets and all of the things that you're hiding from the players. If anyone knows how to set up an obsidian vault with different levels of security and permissions on different sections, I'd love to hear about it, because that would be magical. I particularly enjoy doubling down on little throwaway lines that my players are given. There'll so often be things that I'll remember that they've missed, and I can throw that back at them in entertaining and only occasionally nasty ways. Noticing those details, picking up those bits of information, and then saving them, squirreling them away for a rainy day when your players have forgotten about them, is one of the many joys of game mastering. Having said that, I'm a massive fan of step number 6 of this plan, which you can integrate into a campaign regardless of if you've done any of the previous 5. Something I'd recommend doing in every game, regardless of if you're aiming for this collaborative approach or not, is a session re-zero. At the start of a campaign, I'd aim to have them every 5 sessions or so, but as you progress, as you continue, every 10, every 20 might be more suitable for you. The key question to ask your players is this world what you're hoping for? Not necessarily the details of the story, but the setting, the locations, the NPCs, the monsters, the lore, all of that. The question to ask yourself though is this the world that you hoped it would be? Always remember that your fun is just as important as the fun of the players around your table. Session re-zeros are also a great place to notice all the elements that your players are choosing to add. You might find one player loves fleshing out locations, another likes putting details into NPCs, maybe a third enjoys the rumour mill. You might also notice some gaps as well. Maybe nobody likes making monsters. Maybe no one's interested in making more details for the pantheons of the gods. But that's okay, you're still the game master, you're still the one in ultimate control of what happens in this world. But what if you didn't have to be? What if your players were enjoying world building so much that you decide to go one step further into a GM-less game? That's a topic for a separate video. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the comments. The most important thing in all this, try it, give it a go. You have absolutely nothing to lose. If you've got players around your table who are feeling a bit disengaged, being a bit passive, well, this can bring them out of their shells. This can bring them into the fold to help them be enthusiastic, keen role players who will contribute to the joy of the table. This will sound a bit weird, but be prepared to be surprised by your players' imaginations. Seeing when their brains go in a completely different direction to yours is a joy, and any chance you get to witness that at your table is something to savour. TTRPGs are unique in allowing this shared collaborative storytelling, while still having the mysteries of rolling a dice. If you're brand new to this channel and this is your first time seeing one of my videos, well, hi there, welcome. These two videos here have my philosophy, my approach to playing and running TTRPGs, where I try and show how we can all be storytellers together with our friends.